sad news. They just had the memorial and the funeral. Swizz Beatz talked about how, literally on stage, he said the importance of having a will.
Did he not have one?
Kind of sounds like it. Kind of sounds like it. DMX died with 17 children.
Oh my God.
And I'd also heard a rumor that like there was like 10 other women that are saying that DMX might be the father of their kids as well. I don't know whether that part is true or not, but this is kind of what's circulating on the internet.
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a handful of those might actually be his kids, just by the number of kids that he has.
That's crazy, because then it doesn't matter how much money he had in the bank. If it's getting split 30 ways, then it ain't much, you know?
Right. Is that basically, yeah, split 30 ways. So, yeah, yeah. Well, listen, he lived a hell of a life.
He did.
We would be lucky to live a life that DMX lived to 50 years old.
The one thing that I was really taken aback by, I was listening to an interview with on the New York Times music podcast with the guy who, I forget his name, but he wrote his biography. And the way he talked about DMX's friends really stood out to me, because if you were going to be DMX's friend, you just really had to be along for the fucking ride.
Right.
And you had to really love that dude, because, you know, we all like live our lives trying to accommodate other people in our lives, make them feel comfortable and shit. I mean, from the sounds of it, there was not a lot of that from DMX. Like you had to love him and believe in him enough to really be on board for everything. And that's just, I don't know, it just stands out to me a lot as like just what kind of person he was, that all these people didn't leave his side all those years, you know?
Well, DMX is still DMX. And he's still, at one point, you know, an A-level celebrity. And still, wherever he went, he was still DMX. And at the end of the day, you see how it is. Not to say to take anything away from these friends around him, but you can make a good income just being around DMX.
That's fair. And one thing though that they said too is that I found really interesting was like with DMX, he might end up just talking to a homeless guy outside the Starbucks for an hour and a half.
Right.
And that gets added to the schedule for the day. Like that's just like if he wants to do it, it's happening, and everything else for the day has to get moved around, because you're just dealing with this personality that can't really be held back, and you're just going to let him do what he wants to do. And a lot of times he wanted to sort of, you know, hold court with other people who had been through a lot like himself. And
that's that.
And the other thing the dude said was that he wanted to go talk to DMX's mom, and he said she was not hard to find. Like he pulled up to the neighborhood and she was just around. Like it was, you know, she was just on the block, I guess.
Well, listen, we actually had an interview planned with DMX.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. We were trying to schedule it near the end. Swizz Beatz actually even got involved at one point to help us out. Shout out to Swizz, because it was something he didn't have to do. He didn't have any anything to gain from the interview happening or not. But me and him go back, and he actually went out of his way to make sure. And it was actually in the planning stages. It had been in the planning stages, but it got off track because it's DMX.
Right.
But Swizz actually managed to get it back on track again. And, you know, it was literally days apart. Like, it was like, I found out it was back on track, like on a Wednesday. And then on Friday, the heart attack happened. So it was just kind of devastating news overall. But in the process of us preparing for this interview, I was doing all the research around it. And his mother was massively abusive.
Yeah.
DMX's mom, at 6 years old, there was a story where he had opened up her wallet to, like, you know, to take a piece of, she took like a piece of paper out of her wallet and kind of scribbled on it or something, you know, some little paper. And it was like, you know, it was basically something to do with her job. And when she woke up the next morning and saw he did that, she beat him with a broom handle and knocked like 2 or 3 of his teeth out. As a 6-year-old. And once you lose teeth, it kind of really affects your health in general. If you're not, you know, because you're not putting new teeth in at 6. Those are still your baby teeth. Like, and she was so abusive at home is that he just became homeless at one point and started just sleeping with dogs. And that's where the whole pit bull dog thing kind of came around, because he lived in such an abusive household. So
this really like hit the nail on the head for me. They said if you look at a Jay-Z or a Kendrick, they're the person telling you about what's going on in the streets. They're telling you about what's going on in the neighborhood. They're telling you about life. But there's a level of distance, you know, like Jay-Z was telling you that he was a drug dealer, but he's also clearly like observing a lot of what's going on around him in his lyrics. Like DMX is really what was really a character in the movie. Like he was in it. Like he was him. A lot of movies have a character like him, you know, like a guy who acts off emotion and is kind of out of control. And I mean, he just was like such a unique personality in that regard. It's hard to be that person and have a long life, you know?
Yeah. Rest in peace, DMX.
Facts.
One of the greatest ever.
Mm.